Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. It's Sunday, February the 12th, and I'm seeing some pretty interesting trends that are really creating quite an opportunity for investors. And I'll get right into that. Why don't I do a share screen here? Let me just get to the right one. And I'll pull that up in a second. Yeah, what I'm seeing is that on February the 3rd, the U.S. employment numbers came out. So right about here, and the U.S. dollar blasted off. And of course, gold, silver, copper, other commodities that are priced in the U.S. dollar got under pressure. But the big trend that I'm seeing is that I believe the sentiment is very negative, even though we've had a few good months in the price performance of the gold and a lot of the gold stocks. It only took like a week and a half, or not even a week and a half, a week to really see a lot of the gains that we saw in the last few months be given back very rapidly, which, to me is a very bullish indicator. And why I say that is, when the sentiment is that weak, it certainly is an indication that we're early in a bull market. I believe that we are in the start of a multi-year bull market for the price of gold, silver, copper, other commodities, and yet a week of poor trading, and a lot of the gains that were given or that were gained in a few month period were given back very rapidly. But really, nothing has changed. This correction that started in the U.S. dollar back here in September and saw the U.S. dollar get beaten down quite dramatically. And as you can see in the 50-day moving average, it's falling off a cliff. And in early January, it went through a death cross. And now the 200-day is about to start rolling over. But after those employment numbers, it moved upwards. Although I would point out that as it hit the 50-day moving average, it kind of petered out that rally. And so on a short-term basis, I believe that the U.S. dollar is very oversold or overbought. And the next big move will be a new lower low, and the continuation of this movement in the 50-day moving average, and the 200-day starts to roll over and trend downwards as well. The fundamental reasons for that, again, they haven't really changed. Yes, they had I believe, a misleading jobs report in that, people look at the headline number and get all excited one way or the other. And the reality is that if you look deeper into the details, in fact, the full-time employment is down, and a lot of those jobs that were created were people taking on second and third part-time jobs to deal with the inflation that's has been around for about a year now. Pretty aggressive inflation at that. And, when people have to take on second and third part-time jobs, that's not what a strong economy really makes. And there's lots of evidence that this economy is not strong. You look at the housing sales, they've dropped off a cliff. You look at the inverted yield curves, they're all suggesting that there's a significant economic slowdown ahead. Maybe one of the worst we've seen in many years. And then you look at the credit card debt. The credit is going up by consumers, and they're paying an outrageous, on average, 19% interest rates on those credit cards. That kind of stuff can't continue for very longer. And then you look at the country's credit card, and the country is paying almost $1 trillion a year in interest payments on the debt. These are not what make a strong economy. So I firmly believe that in the latter part of 2023, in the second half of 2023, that the Federal Reserve will be going into their next rounds of quantitative easing, or at least we'll be talking about the need to be doing that. And all those economic indicators that I just talked about are the reason why. They contend that that's not going to happen. I'm in the other camp. I think in the latter part of 2023, we're going to see the Federal Reserve lowering interest rates. Okay, so as the US dollar got stronger, and here's an exact reason why I follow the US dollar so closely. As the US dollar got strong, gold got weak. After a bullish trend from November until early February, it was a very bullish trend. As you can see, it aggressively broke through the 50-day, the 200-day, and had a golden cross in January, had an outstanding January effect reading. And I think that's the important trend. I think this is an oversold condition here. And I would point out that while the US dollar is banging its head against the 50-day moving average that's in decline, the price of gold is still trading above the 50-day moving average. So on a relative basis, gold is stronger, even though it's short-term oversold. And we're seeing similar things in the price of silver. I'll just bring that up right now. Here's the silver price. And as you can see, short-term oversold, trading right in between the 50-day and 200-day moving averages. Did go through a golden cross and ahead of the gold. It had a sideways January effect. But nonetheless, where gold goes, so goes silver. It doesn't have a perfect correlation, but as you can see here, when it started to rally, when gold started to rally, so did the US dollar, or so did silver. Then in January, it went sideways. Now that the US dollar got strong, it corrected. But I think this is pretty oversold here, and we're due for a short-term rally here any day. Okay, so let's take a look at copper. Copper is very similar to the price of gold. Had a big breakout in November, broke out above the 200-day, had a golden cross in January, had a pretty darn strong January effect. And as the US dollar got stronger after the employment numbers in February, it's corrected, but it's still trading above the 50-day moving average. So again, I think that the trend in 2023 for the price of copper, as I do believe also for gold and silver, is going to be a very outstanding year for the price of these metals. And therefore, I think that it will be a very good year for the stocks in these metals. The first company I'm going to talk about today is a company that's on my mind a lot, because I think that they're the next major gold producer in Nevada. And that company is i-80 Gold. i-80 Gold is kind of indicative of the action. It has come under weakness in the last, in early February, but it had an outstanding run from November through to early January. And now it's come off. I think the reason that it's come off is that they've been waiting on some important news from their CRD discovery in Eureka, Nevada. I believe it's very oversold here. Important golden cross here. I'm very powerful 50-day moving average trend. And again, I think this one's oversold. They've just got such a tremendous group of assets. If you look at their Granite Creek project, they've got on their South Pacific zone, they've got over a 600-meter strike length. Excellent continuity of the high grade, and that zone is moving to the north. And you follow that rock package and the fault that's associated with the mineralization, and it takes you right to the Turquoise Ridge, which is a 25 million ounce gold deposit. So they're definitely in elephant country, and they're finding the right kind of mineralization, and it's heading towards a very large, massive gold deposit, and I think that's what they have on their hands at Granite Creek. Earlier this year, that was their number one project, but now the projects in Eureka, Nevada that they have are kind of putting that down to second class. And to be able to put something like Granite Creek down to second highest priority project is a pretty substantial accomplishment on its own. But at Ruby Hill, they've drilled to the west of the Archimedes pit, where they found the Ruby Deeps, very thick intersections of high-grade gold material that could be bulk underground mined. Above that, and right where the bottom of the Archimedes pit is the 426 zone. Now they drilled under it, and they've got another high-grade zone, so it's almost like a cul-de-sac or something there that goes beside the west side of the pit and underneath it. And so there's that in itself is a world-class gold project. But then to the south of that Archimedes pit, they've got this phenomenal CRD discovery that has high grades of silver, lead, zinc in a CRD. Those are the normal metals that you get. But then they've got an overprint of extreme or high grade to bonanza grades of gold. So that makes that rock value just off the charts. You're looking from anything over $1,000 a ton to over $5,000 a ton. So it's a tremendous discovery. And the idea that you've got two world-class projects right on the same property is quite unique in the business. And so then right to the immediate south of that, they've got this, of the CRD discovery, they've got this big geophysical anomaly that likely is the source of where that CRD with the high-grade gold overprint came from. I can't wait to see them drill that. And then underneath the pit, they've got some geophysics that suggest that maybe there's a big porphyry driving all these fluids up. And so again, it's a pretty unique situation that they have at their Ruby Hill project. And that's why I think that i-80 Gold is going to become a multi-billion-dollar company. And currently they're trading for under $1 billion. For investors out there that want exposure to gold with less risk, but still lots of upside potential, this is a key asset, a cornerstone holding for investors of that kind. The next company that I'm going to talk about is right beside them, and that's Paycore. Paycore also has an extreme, oh, by the way, they also raised $65 million recently for them to get aggressively into their CRD at i-80 Gold. So now Paycore is right beside them, and they've recently announced an $18 million financing, and they have a CRD much like what i-80 Gold has, about 2,000 meters away, 2,500 meters away. They've got a CRD with very high grades of silver, lead, and zinc. And then they've also got an overprint of high grade to a bonanza grade gold. So I think that these two systems are associated, and that they've just got some. Paycor has a tremendous opportunity with what they have at their property, and they still have a very modest valuation relative to what, when you start finding $1,000 and up rock, the metal value in the rock, and they're also finding a significant amount of it. So it's showing the signs that it could have some size to it as well. In fact, I'm just going to switch over to my my Substack. So what I have here is, this is Substack. This is the site that I've been using to present all my content, my interviews, and my research reports on Substack, and you can find that at rocksandstocks.substack.com. Excuse me. And February has been a pretty busy month. As you can see, I put out a lot of content. Here is one interview that I think a lot of people should take a look at. Athena Gold has made an impressive high-grade gold discovery of oxide gold in Nevada. There are only a few holes into it, but in this interview, I suggest you check it out, because they were able to show me some really impressive maps. You can see a corridor of faulting, and these faults are important because they're the conduit or the path of least resistance that the fluids that carry the metals come up. And right in the middle of that is a very large alteration package. So when the fluids carrying the gold makes its way up towards surface, it interacts with the country rock. And when it interacts with the country rock, it alters that rock. So when you have a big alteration package contained within two east-west faults, it's a very good indicator that you're looking at a very big target there. So then they've only drilled a few holes into it, but they're getting some extreme high grades in an oxide discovery, and bonanza grades, actually, if you're looking at it in the perspective of an oxide discovery. And it's a very impressive new discovery that they're making. I think they've got the makings of something that's going to be is going to catch a lot of investor attention, but this company has less than a $10 million valuation. So I think you've got a lot to look at in Athena Gold. So I do my Rocks and Stocks news shows. So that's how I go about, the news shows are how I go about cultivating new companies to pick in my reports, to put on my radar screen, and also to invite to become sponsors. Now, my sponsorship program is the way that I like to do things, because when I have sponsors, I'm able to put out a lot of content. I do interviews with the sponsors. I write reports about the sponsors. I talk about them in my my sector reports. I really keep the story in front of my audience. And I think that in this day and age where a lot of people have short attention spans online, that you really need to get that information out on a consistent basis. So on February the 2nd, Timberline had some news out. Timberline is a sponsor of my shows. I'm a big believer in what they have, and later on you'll see an interview that you can find on my rocksandstocks.substack.com. Goliath Resource is a company that I'm following very closely these days. They have a really exciting project up in northern British Columbia in the Golden Triangle, and what I see there are sheets of gold mineralization that look like as they come down the mountain, they're going to connect at depth. There's also a big network of faulting that's associated with those zones, and that those faults look like they're coming together at depth, and they're also getting some sulfide mineralization that has caught my attention. So Goliath Resources is definitely on my radar screen. Origin Royalties is an official pick of mine. I really believe that this company is at an exciting stage for a royalty company, in that they're kind of a prospect generator that goes out there and finds good projects that they then vend out to partners, and the partners do the exploration and they keep a royalty. And they've successfully done that with First Majestic on their Ermitaño project in Mexico, in the Sonora Valley area. They vended that project to First Majestic, and First Majestic went in and found the Ermitaño mine, which is one of their best performing mines that they have, and Origin Royalties owns a 2% royalty. So they just in the last year or so they became a cash flowing royalty company. Now they've also got an important project in Nevada called the Silicon Project that Anglo Gold Ashanti, one of the world's largest gold mining companies, is developing that project. They came out with a 3.4 million oxide gold maiden resource. That's a phenomenal start to that project, and it looks like they might have something just as big at their what is it called, Merlin zone that's to the south of that Silicon zone. So they're sitting on something that's very that they hold a 1% royalty on that, and then the company has a slew of other projects that are in various different stages of exploration. They've got major mining companies as partners. This company is a high growth royalty company that's just gone through that transition of having a bunch of royalty projects, and now they've turned one of those into a mine, and it's generating a lot of free cash flow and helping them build up their cash position. These notes to paid subscribers, I'm very fortunate on Substack that I've got a bunch of new paid subscribers, and I send out notes when I don't really want to do a full show, or I want to give them heads ups on some new picks that I'm making and stuff like that. I do it in notes to paid subscribers. Thanks a lot, by the way, you paid subscribers out there. It's really got me encouraged to write those notes, and I like doing that writing. All right, so we're gonna move up here a little bit further. Timberline, that's the interview that I mentioned previously. They've got the New York Canyon project, which is in close proximity to both Paycore and I-80 Gold's big CRD discovery. At the New York Canyon project, there was historical mining, and they've gone in there and done a bunch of sampling. Actually, you can see it on there. They did a bunch of sampling in here, and it looks like they've got, well, they had historical CRD mining in this area, and now they've done a bunch of sampling and shown that, you know, that is an underexplored project, and it's in close proximity to what I-80 Gold has just up here, and right beside them is Paycore. So they're right in that CRD Eureka camp. I invite you to check out that interview. Let me go back here. Okay. Timberline. Oh, this one here. This is covers mining stocks in the news. This one was an interesting day because I found some. See, so we talked about Faraday. Well, this was the day that Newmont and Newcrest. Well, Newmont announced that they were making an offer to buy Newcrest. So that was the big theme. I was on that day. I was talking about the importance of consolidation at the start of a bull market, and that's exactly what we're seeing with Newmont and Newcrest. The number one gold producer is buying the number six gold producer. It doesn't add anything to the supply chain of gold, which is relatively weak these days. But what it does do is it gives Newmont security of their production going forward. Again, it doesn't do anything to the supply of gold, merely takes it away from Newcrest and puts it into Newmont's hands. The supply chain is still very weak, and that doesn't change. On that day, Faraday Copper put out some excellent news. Relevant Gold put out excellent news. Orion Resources, Firefox Gold, Satori Resources, and Golden Ridge. And just to show you how I kind of generate my picks from these in the news shows, Faraday Copper, I just made them a new pick. Relevant Gold, Firefox was previously, and Golden Ridge Resources. I just put that show out earlier today, and that's how they become picks. I first see them on the in the news shows, then I keep watching them and I see more good news, and they often become picks. And that's sort of how the process works with me. Okay, so then keep going forward. Here's another of my notes to paid subscribers. This one is an update from my rocks and stocks. I wanted to let people know that I've been gaining a lot of paid subscribers. So I wanted people to know that that's an option. You can get all my stuff for free. My main reports, my interviews, my sector reports, and all that. Being a subscriber, a free subscriber to my Substack. But then if you want those added value notes that I put out, where I give people, heads ups on future shows that I'm doing and future picks that I'm making, that's where you want to go for that. So then on February 7th, I did an interview with a junior called Massivo Silver. They've got a project in Nevada that I'm very excited about. And this guy here is Brian Brewer. Brian had, in the past, has had some very big success, as he was one of the geologists that was involved with mine finders. They made a big discovery in Mexico and ultimately were bought out and made their shareholders very happy. And Brian is the QP geologist for Massivo Silver. And I think these guys are on to something very exciting. And I invite you to check out that interview. The basics of what we talked about is that historically, there was a mine on their property in the around World War II. And it reported some just off the charts bonanza grade gold and silver. And then it went many decades without any exploration. And then there was some minimal drilling. And the interesting part about that is Brian and his team think that these the zones that were mined are vertical, and yet the drilling that was done after the mining or after World War II was vertical holes. So they were kind of looking for horizontal bodies, but Massivo believed that they were vertical bodies. And they drilled, they announced a hole that really caught my attention because they did two things with this hole. They drilled at an angle, okay? So if you looking at a vertical body, a deposit, that's the way you want to drill. You don't want to drill vertical because you can drill 5 feet beside it and you're going to miss it. You want these angled holes, and in their angled hole, they hit one zone and then another zone. So that in itself tells you that their theory that these are vertical zones is correct. If you drill an angled hole and you go through one zone and you catch another one, that tells you that those zones are vertical. The other important factor was that they wanted to drill underneath those old high-grade mine workings to see if that mineralization continued. And that first hole they drilled confirmed that that mineralization does continue. So I'm very optimistic that they're going to have some excellent result news out on that first hole that they drilled of a 10-hole drill program that is currently underway. And this company has a sub $10 million valuation, very little stock out, so it's a tight structure company, share structure company. And I think they're onto something really serious at that project. I-80 Gold on February 8th, so 4 days ago, I interviewed them because they had earlier I was explaining that on the west side of their the old Archimedes pit, right underneath the pit, they have the 426 zone immediately below that Archimedes pit. Then you go a little bit lower through that 426 zone and you run into the Ruby Deeps zone. Ruby Deeps is a very thick intersection of high-grade gold for a bulk underground mining target. And so I believe that project alone, the gold, and then they, on this news, they announced that they hit right underneath that pit. So it's kind of like a crescent shape or a C shape, where they're getting all of this high-grade gold that makes that a world-class project. In the news segment, I talked about Sokoman Minerals as well. They're a sponsor of my shows, and I'm really bullish on their orogenic gold system, that they're starting to hit the jewelry boxes of an orogenic gold system that reminds me of what the Swan Zone at the Fosterville mine, which was a company maker for Kirkland Lake, that ultimately led them to being one of the lowest cost gold producers in the business. And ultimately they got bought out, and they were a huge performer because they were processing such at low cost and high grades for extreme high margins, free cash flow generating machine, and it led them to being bought out. So then I-80 Gold had that news that day, and Massivo Silver did as well. So again, that's sort of how I go about picking stocks. Walker River Resources, I had an interview with them on February the 9th. What really excites me about that project is their Lapon Mountain target has about 600 meters from side to side on the mountain of widespread gold mineralization, including bonanza grades and high grade. And then if you look at the top of the mountain to the bottom of the mountain, it's about 800 meters there. They also have a network of faulting. So you've got the cracks in the earth that the fluids containing the gold make their way up. And Yeah, that's a very special project. I think that they're onto something that will prove to be a multi-million ounce gold discovery, and it's in Nevada, and the company still has a very modest valuation. I love these big gold systems, and I think they've got a big, powerful gold mineralizing system there. And what really excites me the most is when you've got um, you got high grade gold, high grade to bonanza grade gold in the system as well. As you can see, I've been putting out a ton of new reports here. This was on the 9th, and I talked about that I had done that interview with Walker River, did an interview with Massivo, did an interview with I-80 Gold, did an interview with Paycor. AMAX Exploration had some really important news out. I think they're on to something that will be a future high-grade gold mine, and I don't think AMAX Exploration will be the one that mines it. I think ultimately they're going to get bought out at multiples of their current valuation. Then I talked about Galantis Gold. These were some of my top picks. 9 Mile Metals, they're looking at the Bathurst mining camp, and it's one of the top 3 VMS mining camps in the world, and they've been recently finding new massive sulfide occurrences, and it's a very exciting project in New Brunswick. They're drilling right now on trying to find the source of a very high grade lens that is thick and has up to 10% copper in it. And now they're drilling to find the source of that. 20 kilometers away, they found a massive sulfide occurrence, and they need to find the source of that. Plus, they've got just a multitude of geophysical anomalies that look like they could be new massive sulfide occurrences as well. So that day, I wanted to talk to my paid subscribers and let them know about updates on those. Here's an interview I did on 2 days ago, Friday, with I-80 Gold. I-80 Gold continues to deliver remarkable drilling results from their Ruby Hill project in Nevada. I talked about those earlier. And this is another good interview that you want to check out because I think that like I said, I think this company's growing into a multi-billion-dollar company with 3 world-class discoveries on their hands that they're simultaneously developing at the same time, which is in itself a unique situation. Rocks and stocks news on mining stocks in the news. This one I talked about AMEX Exploration, Galantis Gold, 9 Mile Metals, Copper Lake, Delta Resources, and Advanced Lithium. That's another one you want to check out. Here's the interview I just put out yesterday with Christina McCarthy, who's the CEO of the company and a geologist. They announced that they raised $18 million to rapidly advance their remarkable CRD project in Nevada. Again, this one's right beside I-80 Gold's big CRD discovery and just has some phenomenally good extreme high grade to bonanza grades of both silver, lead, zinc, as well as an overprint of high grade gold. And you don't get $18 million unless you've got something very exciting, but they still offer a tremendous opportunity for investors because the stock is still cheap. So that's another one you want to do your homework on. And that interview that I did yesterday with Christina McCarthy will give you a lot of good insights into that. And I added a whole new group of with that action that's happened recently. It brought 6 companies down to the levels that I think that they're great opportunities for investors. And so I talked about this one, a Faraday Copper, Relevant Gold, Golden Ridge Resources, Emergent Metals, Suma Silver, and Massivo Silver. I added those as official picks to my list. And so I started this show by talking about how I think the sentiment is still the kind of sentiment that you see in the early days of a bull market. Gold has improved much from the November until just about a week ago. And you're always going to see some corrections inside of a bull market. Nothing goes straight up. And yet, sort of the first significant correction that we've had in this new bull market for gold has created some tremendous oversold conditions for gold stocks, which to me is an indication that the sentiment, although it was improving for a couple months, there's not a lot of conviction. Otherwise, they wouldn't be selling it like they have when the US dollar seems to have, off of a misleading report on employment, has created an oversold situation for the price of the US dollar and an overbought, sorry, I got that mixed up, an overbought situation for the US dollar and an oversold situation for the price of gold, silver, copper, and especially in the companies, the stocks. And where a lot of my peers are kind of pulling in their horns and they're kind of fearful of putting out a lot of reports, as you can see from my website here at rocksandstocks.substack.com, I'm just cranking them out and I'm finding new companies to pick. And I got a lot of enthusiasm because I can see the fundamentals that have driven the price of gold from these. Let me just pull it up here again while I'm closing off my conversation. This start of the gold bull trend. And you see here, we can have some corrections. There's nothing wrong with that because often it's the blast off point for the next leg up. But there was some confidence gaining here, but this action based on the US dollar getting overbought and gold getting oversold, shows that there's no conviction, and the confidence level of gold stock investors is pretty dismal. So that creates an opportunity for investors that, understand the long-term realities of what's happening, can see the trends, do their homework, understand the companies that they're investing in, have reasonable time frames, and don't watch those stocks. That's one of the recipes for disaster in any sector, is when you watch that daily activity or a week's worth of activity, and that affects your confidence and your conviction. When in reality, the fundamentals that started that bull market for gold back in November haven't changed. The arguments are still the same. The US dollar is headed lower. The interest rates, the Federal Reserve is about to stop raising interest rates. That is going to be very bearish for the US dollar, especially when they start talking about their next rounds of quantitative easing. Then you look at the gold market, and there's not enough new discoveries being made to replace what the gold miners are mining every year. You can even see that in the recent news that with Newmont buying out Newcrest, Newmont hasn't been able to replace what they mine out in their old mines, so they had to go out and use their checkbook to buy a big gold mining company. It tells you that they're not good at finding new discoveries and developing new mines to replace at the same pace of what they're mining in their old mines. And there's plenty of other evidence that gold's going higher. You look at the average grade head grades of mines throughout the world, and that's been in decline for close to a decade now. And again, from a big perspective, this action in Newmont taking over Newcrest is a sign that it's indicative of the entire industry. Newmont isn't the only one. The whole industry is having problems replacing what they mine in their old mines with new developments and new discoveries. So this, and then you've got strong demand, some of the strongest demand in the history of central bankers. They're buying gold hand over fist. And why are they doing that? Because they need something that that protects their currency. They've got all this, they've been printing money like it's going out of style, and they don't have hard currencies. I think there's a bit of a somewhat of how do you say that word? I'm looking, it's lost. I'm lost to me right now, but there's like a second coming of the gold standard. These central bankers are starting to buy aggressively gold, and there's not enough of it. It's heading a lot higher, folks. And the gold stocks are an even better investment because gold moves up 20%, and you'll see gold stocks moving up 50 to 100%. And that's what I try to identify for you on my shows, is the kind of companies that will see that kind of performance. So that's my rant for Super Bowl Sunday. It's kind of indicative of the changes in my life. When I was younger, I never missed Super Bowl Sunday. And here I am on Super Bowl Sunday while the game is on, talking about rocks and stocks. So there you go. Well, I'll have to go and check the score after this show. On that note, have a great day. My shows are for information purposes only. Important for you to speak with your financial advisor before making any investment decisions, and do that homework. It's really important stuff. On that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.